when Jay was getting ready to kick off this event. By the way, congratulations, Jay, for Podcamp Toronto too. I understand, but we know who the real authority is.
I'll write down my phone number.
Anyways, so John turned on his computer, and he has Ubuntu, and it played this long introductory sound, and it reminded me of this video that I saw, and I thought, just for fun, to get our brains going this morning, I would play this. We have audio?
Probably 2 and 3.
Well, it's actually, there's not a whole lot going on right now.
That's my number. That's my name.
Is this in progress?
Okay. Let me roll back to the beginning so we can make sure that... Well, let me play something really quickly and see what happens. iTunes should be playing something.
It's a very small video that we're
on. Okay. Okay, here we go. This is from YouTube. This is a group that does pranks in universities.
Okay, virtual.
If you get disconnected and create you run with 2 files. Just press start again. Right? It shouldn't get disconnected. So okay. Okay. Thanks. And you can always follow me through. Okay. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for the phone number. Give me this one.
We're not doing video podcasting.
No, I can't see it. Hold on. By the way, this is being viewed something like 800 and some odd thousand times. I don't know, I thought it was funny. Anyways, I'll get this out of the way. I'm Mark Blevis, and I'm one of a few people who's going to be presenting today as part of the Zero to Podcasting. And it's going to be really loose. You don't have to sit in these, take off your jackets, and move your chairs around. You don't have to sit in any particular order or any fashion. And I'm actually going to defer to, this is a combination of workshops and what we call campfire discussions. Everybody can sit in circles, you can sit on the floor, you can lie down, you can do whatever. This is an extension of what we did in Ottawa back in November. And our lead facilitators today are actually Catherine Matthews over here and Rob Lee behind the camera, and you're going to have to abandon the camera to get in front of her. And we also have Scarborough Dude, who's participating in the facilitation today, and Stand Up Sage, and
Stand
Bob
Up
Boyach.
Sage.
And I'm sure everybody will tell you about which podcast to do, and feel free to contribute. This event, with this session over the next 2 days, which is going to take you from like the seedling of an idea of doing a podcast to thinking about how you can push the limits of your podcast once you get it rolling, and then that'll be by the end of the day tomorrow. It's really meant to be an interactive session. We're not here to dictate how things go. We have experience. Some of us have been doing this for a couple of years, and we'll share with you our experience, our knowledge, some of the technology that we use, and our ideas. But sorry, we're missing somebody?
Michelle.
Oh, Michelle Sullivan. I couldn't even see you. Michelle, stand up.
Another height.
I didn't even know you were, I hadn't seen you all day. So Michelle Sullivan from Montreal as well is participating. And what we're really hoping for is to have a balanced involvement. We can stand up here and tell you what we know, and that's what we know. But the way we push the limits on what we know and what we can do next is by hearing some of the challenges people face, some of the fears they have, some of the ideas they have, some things they've tried that have succeeded and failed. And that's how collectively this weekend, this 2-day session, is going to be worthwhile for all of us. And it's going to, and at the end of this weekend, with any luck, the experts are going to be shaking their heads. The experts are going to be shaking their heads, thinking, "Why have I done it wrong for so long?" So I'm going to pass it back to. I'm going to pass it back to Catherine and Rob, and they're going to lead the day, and we're just going to do what we're told. This is the part you get out.
No, you're coming over here. And I'm hoping that the video stream is still going out. I got about 30 seconds worth of instruction on how to make it run, and hopefully it's doing it by itself. So hi, I'm Rob Lee. My wife, Catherine Matthews, and she's the podcaster in the family. I'm the tech guy.
And this is why I'm really much more comfortable like hiding over there in the corner, because like there's no video and nobody has to actually see me. I'm gonna get my notes.
So welcome to Zero to Podcasting. If anybody wants to move up a little closer so you can see us or hear us, and that'd be cool. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, first session. If you haven't actually looked at the agenda, the idea is to take you from no place to producing your own podcast, promoting it, things like that. So today's sessions include picking a topic and planning a podcast. We're going to have a circle discussion about that, so everybody's going to participate. Hint, hint. Next, we'll have a technology selection discussion. Hopefully we can get particularly Bob and Mark with their great expertise involved in that.
But I think of all of us that are here today facilitating, I think we all work in slightly different ways. We have slightly different experiences. We use different tools. So we have a range of things that we can bring to the table and tell you what we do. And if you're already started, you can tell us what you use too, because we can get, as Mark was saying earlier, we're here to learn from you as well.
So following that, there'll be a workshop. There'll be also some times for breaks and things like that in between. People need to have coffee and things like that. We'll be recording the show. Mark and Bob will be leading that. Next will be editing, mixing, and producing the show using Audacity. So that'll be a 2-part session. We kind of wanted to break it up a little bit to fit the rhythm of the other sessions in case anybody wants to duck out, use the law of 2 feet and go and participate in another session. And also because it's going to be a long one. It's going to be about 2 hours long, so you want to have a little bit of a break there. We'll follow that up with another workshop on getting started with Libsyn. If you don't know what Libsyn is, you'll find out. It's one of the ways you can get your podcast out there on the network. And we'll follow up with a workshop on podcasting directories and how to promote your show. So that's day 1, pretty full. Tomorrow there's a lot of campfire discussions. We'll start off with owning your online presence. registering yourname.com or your own domain with GoDaddy, or any of the other registration services that are out there. There's plenty of them. The next will be a workshop on setting up a site using WordPress, using Libsyn as a backend. Afterwards, a workshop on how to use PodPress, which is a plugin that's very popular with WordPress to track stats and things like that. And there'll be a circle discussion on portable recording. A lot of people like to do field recordings, sound seeing, things like that. And there's we'd like to hear about what everybody's doing with that. Finishing up with next steps. So how do you take your podcast to the next level? And that will conclude the 2 days. And at the end of it, if you aren't already a podcaster, you could be. So we'd like to.
Question. Tomorrow, the WordPress and PodPress and any discussions on business models, what time would that be? Let me come back to that.
Got the schedule.
Got the actual schedule. Hold on a second.
One of the things I'd like to think about, though, is kind of the setup for the room. I know we're a lot of us, but this came out of our experience with Bob and Mark at Podcamp Ottawa, which was done like a campfire where everybody sat around in a circle. We had, 20 to 30 people at that point, so it was a little easier to do. But I think if the brainstorming, the sharing, the campfire sessions are going to work, I think we're going to have to find a way that we can move to maybe see each other a little better, or any thoughts?
Could just turn everything in towards the middle as we're two groups facing each other.
And by the way, don't feel that you have to sit down every time. You want to stand up, walk around, stretch legs. When we were in Ottawa, and this floor doesn't really lend itself to it very well, but people actually lay down on the floor sometimes. Whatever works for you, whatever engages your creative thought process, go for it.
Okay, the question about PodPress. It looks like we got it's broken up into two roughly 30-minute sessions, starting around quarter to 2 tomorrow, and then a short break, and then the second part around 2:30.
Thank you very much.
One of the things on the Canadian Podcast Buffet yesterday, you guys were talking about having people throw out their questions to you. And I thought maybe that's where we could start this morning, was what are your concerns? What do you need? Where are you coming from? What do you need from us? What can you, no.
What about here, this agenda? What do we need? Or do you want to put on the screen so we can rush it? Yeah, good. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Goyetch.
You're letting me use your name?
I'm letting you use.
Max are so cool. So we'll call this the parking lot. Any questions? Throw it up, and we'll get to them.
I really like the idea of setting goals and objectives at the very beginning, so that people get what they intended at the end of the session. What I want to get out of it is WordPress and integrating my podcasts or any multimedia into WordPress. So that's something that I'm looking forward to this weekend.
I'm here from the Battery Museum. I'm doing some online marketing consulting, and they've asked me to look into podcasts. I don't podcast myself. They don't podcast at all. I'm not convinced that it is the best answer for us, the best use of our resources, but one of the things I'd like to find out is when does it make sense to do a podcast, when does it not?
My name's Jennifer, and I'm just creating a video podcast, and I don't know anything technically, so I'm trying to find out how to find resources to do it affordably. and also marketing.
How many people here are more from a hobby end of things? Few, and I guess that, yeah. So that would mean the rest of you are looking more towards business or marketing or that type of podcasting? How to use it as a tool in a business or marketing situation?
Well, we have.
I am more interested in getting my own and the best messages out to the public about issues.
Who here is looking to make money strictly from their podcast?
And other resources.
Okay, yeah. I think what you'll find is that the team that's kind of put this together, none of us is living from this, right? But we've all been at it for a while, and if you know, you're not going to get, I don't think, how to make money from your podcast, okay? Because that's really up to you. It's like if this was a session on making brochures. I can't tell you how to make money with brochures. It depends where you put them. It depends how you put them. It depends what you put in your brochure. All that stuff. So think bigger than that. Just something good. Podcast does not equal money, but it can be a nice support to a money-making venture.
Yep.
Okay, so that the angle maybe.
My name is Tim. I'm in the process of becoming a high school auto shop teacher. What I want to do is put my lesson plans on a video podcast and make them available to the kids that study. They can study from them. They can upload and download them. So what I'm looking for is where I can put those things legally to have them accessible by kids without making it so they can get to other stuff. Like, is it best to put on a school server or through iTunes, and how I go about loading them to iTunes or whatever the kids would use.
So if I call that where to host, would that be part of where or how
to host them? You know, whether I do it from my own web page to the school or whatever.
You might want to throw up there also, Bob, dealing with public institutions and concerns relating to getting messages out from public institutions. I don't know that we can specifically answer that, but we could probably talk about it a bit. Is Robin Brown in any chance? No? He might have some thoughts on that, actually.
Yeah, I'd like to know, learn as much as we can this weekend around RSS.
Cool. It's a big part of it. Anything else, anybody?
Having done the first episode of the first podcast and having ripped out my hair on occasion, I'm hoping to learn how to do it better next time and to get more efficient.
So efficient from
a lot of, mostly from like, I guess, the technical point of view.
So
learn from my past
technical
mistakes,
efficiency?
find out why some of them happen, for example.
Technical efficiency? Is that covered? It doesn't like it.
Yeah, the next
technical goodness. English is my second language. So that's my Anything else?
You know, and if other things come up as the day goes on, we can throw them up and make sure we address them. But let's make sure we address those.
But if you have a specific question and it's not fitting what the discussion is, throw it out and we'll still put it up there and then we'll make sure we get back to it. And that's how, you know, you're going to get more information than can fit into your head over the next 2 days. But it's being recorded and it'll be online, so you can go back and listen to specific parts. If you remember, oh yeah, we talked about that when whatever was talking, then you'll be able to go back and rely on it. Yes, the lady in the back there.
I'm sorry, I'm not really that new to this, but I think a really good question, something that I deal with as well, is how do people find your show?
So these are pretty good questions because a lot of these questions are actually fitting into the layout you guys put together. So it's anything else? Can't ask anything more after this.
One question I might have is what sorts of hooks and things would you put in a podcast to make people want to subscribe to it and come back, so it's not just sort of a one-time thing?
Oh yeah, hooking your listeners, I guess, or
yeah,
hooking your audience.
Yeah.
Exciting.
finding, yeah.
Any recommendations for hardware or software?
Okay.
Yeah.
And actually, that's not true. You can podcast with a $200 FutureShock PC.
But I want for, if we want other people to do it, most people have PC, so I know GarageBand pretty much does everything we want, but I need recommendations for PC specifically.
There's software that will actually do it as well as GarageBand and free, and PC or Linux or Mac based. So there's tons of options. We'll go over that.
You'll find that some of us are Mac aficionados and some of us are PC aficionados and some of us don't care, but the tools exist for all platforms and at various price ranges too.
All right, so that's a pretty. Did I forget anything?
Maybe we should dig in.
Should dig in? Well, let you guys have you got. I'll plug in before
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things we had on for this morning was picking your topic, but I think a lot of you come with topics. I don't know about anybody else, but I started listening to podcasts and then I woke up one morning and said, hey, wait, I can do this. And then it was, okay, well, what do I do? What am I interested in? And I hit. So I thought, well, there's a couple of leading podcasts out there, so why don't I try one? And I think probably a lot of us are like that. Either you're coming from a hobby perspective and you want to share your passion or share your issues with others, or if you're coming at it from a business perspective, you want to see, like, your business has something to share with clients. Is this, how are we going to do it? Like you've already got your ideas. You've already got the information. It's already in your head. It's just figuring out how you take it from in your head and put it out there so that people can find it. Right, bro?
So we do for a break?
My brain's full.
It's hard to have a campfire when there's this many people, but it's fabulous.
Well, and the other thing too is this thing is kind of in the way. So if we're going to have campfire discussions, we can always push back to the back of the room, and the web people can suffer for a bit.
Yeah, guys, you can figure the room any way you want throughout the event. It's studio, so maybe move around.
It's sort of dark.
Can we build a campfire and warm it up in here?
That's not a use of television studios. It's against best practice.
Oh, much better.
Mark. Everybody applaud Mark. Come on.
Yesterday he discovered email. Today he discovers the lights.
Tomorrow he'll be scared.
Mark, Bob is the same one. Just take a picture.
Well, so talking about picking a topic and planning the podcast, it sounds like certainly for the people out there who are approaching this from a business side of things, you're just in the stages where you're thinking about starting a podcast. What sort of thoughts are going through the planning phases? Maybe if somebody gets up and starts sharing it, other people will chime in hopefully.
Well, I think one of the things you have to consider before you go that route is best to kind of take a look around the Renaissance and see what competition or if you want is out there. I mean, if you're entering into podcasting, becoming more and more popular, if you're entering into a field where there's already a lot of saturation. We were talking about how many knitting podcasts there are out there. I think you have to find, start with your objective and what you're hoping to accomplish, but then also make sure that you're not into something that's oversaturated and maybe find a unique angle to the story.
And how would you do some recon in your area? Just Google? Or?
Going through, I think, the iTunes store and finding some blogs and podcasts and blogs on the subject.
For example, I'm working on yet another podcast because I'm a huge fan of Bollywood films. And I thought, maybe this is something I can do. I've just started, I go through the forums that I read, I go to the websites that I read, I searched iTunes. There's nobody out there doing, at the moment, there's nobody out there doing a hobby podcast for Bollywood stuff. There's some stuff from BBC Asia Network that's, typical Bollywood gossip interviews kind of thing. There are music shows. I can learn Hindi podcasts, but there's nothing. I haven't figured out myself yet. I mean, this is one of the reasons I'm here today too, is because I'm trying to figure out with a new podcast, how am I going to find my listeners? How am I going to find what am I hook? If I don't want to review, how do I get that what is the message I want to get out there for people? So yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get out there and just do some Google searches, do some iTunes searches, see who's doing what, listen to what they're doing, and see, how does it work for you? Can you do it differently?
I think that's sort of, go ahead.
From when I was doing my research, I'm doing a health and wellness podcast. And I was just floored by how many times I can go there, do some research, then find something new. And then you start digging around again, I find a new directory and find something new. But you're making a very good point. The question is, how am I going to differentiate myself? Like, all the ones I've seen out there have been quite dry and boring, so we want to inject some humor in it to actually engage people and build a relationship with the audience. I think that would be, I hope that would be key.
And it's interesting because, as Michelle and I were talking about the knitting, when I started doing a knitting podcast 2 years ago, there were 3 of them. And now there are hundreds. Really? Hundreds. And
it might be one of the biggest niches in podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last week, I'm on a group called Ravelry, which is like Facebook for knitters. And we have a fairly active podcasters forum. And in the last week, there have been 3 people who put up podcasts. Since Christmas, I've done hand-holding for at least half a dozen people. And every week there's somebody new saying, now we have a lot of people who try and do 2-3 episodes and then say, this is a lot of work, I'm out. The other interesting thing in the knitting podcast world is that people are very vocal. So I have a forum that I run where all the podcast listeners say what they like and what they don't like about shows. If you can find a forum for your podcast where people are that open about the downside is half the people hate music, half the people love music. That's where you decide where your audience is. If you want to go for the people who hate music, don't play music, or play music. Don't play music. If you want to go for the people who love music, then put music in your podcast. I'm often told I don't do a knitting podcast because I don't tell you what I'm knitting that week. I don't tell you what book I've bought this week. I don't tell you what yarn I bought at the yarn shop this week. And that's the vast majority of knitting podcasts are like that. It's very directed at a niche of people who want to know this information, and they're all, the ones that are all like that are very, very popular. So if I were going to do it over again, I might look at that and say, okay, people want to know what I'm knitting, they want to know what I bought at the yarn shop, so maybe I should start telling them that.
But you know what I would do too if I was wanting to start a knitting podcast, is that I would find the ones that I liked, and perhaps the ones that are the most influential. And before I launch my podcast, this goes into the marketing point of things as well, not just the learning curve, is that I start to participate in those podcasts. Often a podcast will have a call-in number, for example, or you can even record an email MP3 file that will be played on the influential knitting podcast. So that when people start to get to know who you are, and by the time you announce that you're launching your podcast, they'll already be interested in what you have to say, because they've heard your name go on different comments and stuff.
Sorry, I just want to jump in from before. The other thing is, and I know that knitting is a very popular niche, and I actually interviewed a few knitting podcasters for a column I wrote, and so I had the opportunity. They're all varied. The shows are very different. You have Guido in the States, a guy who podcasts about knitting, and not only does he do that, he goes to conferences and knits during the session, which you were doing curiously at PAD as well. There's a show in Germany, and I can't remember the name of the show, you might know which one I'm talking about, where it's 3 of them, it's 1 man and 2 women from a knitting group, and now there you have a dynamic of 3 hosts. So each show can be very different in the content it presents, and more importantly, in how it presents the style and the dynamic of the show.
Yeah, and I think the ones that tend to come and go are the ones that model themselves on one of the very popular podcasts, but they don't have, they're not that host, they're not doing what that host does best, and then they find out it's a lot of work, and then it just goes by the wayside. But you're right, the ones who find their own voices can make anything interesting. And I think that's why there's a lot of knitting podcasts, because there are a lot of really interesting people out there with interesting ways of saying things.
They're passionate.
Yeah, they are. They're a very passionate bunch with their fiber craft, and it just comes right through in the podcasts.
I was just going to say that, just mirroring what you're saying, I think really the most important thing is to have your personality come out But that doesn't mean that you share all the little details that maybe aren't relevant, but to just really dig in and, as you said, find your passion and be able to just say, you know what, that's particular to me, and I'm going to share that. And I think where people fall down is they get insecure. They think that maybe what they have to say isn't going to be as important as somebody else. And I think that's the key mistake, is the fact that, you know, we're all like snowflakes.
Yep.
We're all different, and we all have something really unique and important to say, and I think we just have to know that.
Yep. And that's why there can be, you know, 500 knitting podcasts, or there can be 500, you know, on anything, because everyone will bring something different. And the minute and the ones that fail are the ones where they don't bring any passion to it, and you can tell.
One of my own, sorry. For you, what was the reason for going, other than maybe the music, for going with a podcast as opposed to, say, a blog?
I've actually had a blog since about 2000, and I've much in the way of people who do multiple podcasts, I do multiple blogs as well. But I've always had either a personal blog and a knitting blog. And I actually started my podcast as a blog and didn't know what to do with it, because it was just like another one. And it sat there for about a year until I went, gee, that's a good name for a podcast. I find, for me, what I have to do, I mean, I do put music, and that's a chief difference. I can't do that in a blog. I try to put like sound effects. I try to pull things together that fit with what I'm talking about, more or less successfully. But I lost track of what I'm saying.
That's why you have a script for your podcast.
Yeah, that's why I have a script for my podcast.
Reasons for choosing a podcast as opposed to a blog?
There's something very compelling about the human voice, I think. I mean, one of the first podcasts I started listening to was Sage, who does, if you don't know Sage Turtle's Quirky Nomads, you should be listening, because she does some really, really amazing, innovative things. And you blog as well, Sage. But maybe you can speak to this, because there are things that you do that are just perfect as audio.
What I wanted to say about finding your own voice and putting your personality into your podcast, one of my pet peeves is when I'm listening to a podcast and the person who's talking starts saying, oh, but that's sort of a boring story, and I, you know, that was sort of a waste of time. And so as the listener, no matter how good the story was, I think, wow, I did sort of just waste 20 minutes, and I don't think I'll listen to that one again. So it doesn't really matter if you're self-confident. You have to sort of fake it. You have to sort of put that out there, because self-confidence is so attractive, and people are really, they get engaged, they get interested. If you think the story is interesting, if you're presenting it as an interesting story, people will be compelled, and they'll want to come back and listen again. I was doing audio in 1995 on the web, and there were like 3 other people on the web who could listen to it, but I've always been attracted to it from when I was like 9, and my dad wouldn't buy me a video camera, so I would make like audio plays instead. And you know, like my friends would come over and I'd be like, oh, let's do an audio play, and they would, let's watch MTV, you know. nobody ever wanted to do it with me, but I've been doing it for a long time. So I've always found the audio medium attractive, because it's halfway between books and video. You're still have the listener's imagination coming along with you, with, excuse me, whatever you're saying, and that's why I chose the audio medium, because you have so much more freedom than you do with the written word.
Rob, why don't you say something?
I'm just a tech guy, Mark.
In answering your question, the difference between a blog and a podcast, I know a lot of people that read blogs, and they read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of blogs. And it's more like a skim through, get the general idea. But podcasts become really, really engaging, and they're really mobile. So you just pop them into your iPod or your MP3 player, and it's like constant education. I'm a wood turner, and I can have this thing on. If I'm working 15 hours a day, I can't be at my computer reading a blog or looking at a mobile unit reading a blog. So for me, it's really easy and much easier to be audio than to see the written word and to get tired just sitting there. This is something that's much more engaging as audio than I believe.
Well, I think this session's a good example, right? You look at this session, there's probably some people blogging about it, and there's some people who write really well. And no matter how well you blog, what essentially you're going to say is, well, there was a bunch of us in a room talking. But if you listen to the audio of us in the room talking, and all the different voices and the different perspectives and the intonation of the voice and everything like that, it's so much more engaging, right? And that's what podcasting, either audio or video, can do. You can't, I mean, you can lie, but the interpretation is real. I mean, everybody's, I can read a sentence, and just the inflection of my voice will change the meaning. But if you're reading it on a text screen, you don't know what the inflection is. Whereas if you hear it, right away the connection is there, the mind kicks in, you hear the room, you hear the echo, you hear everything. So it's just, the connection is so much stronger.
When it comes to audio and video, the other thing that you want to consider is what does video add that you cannot get through audio? Because video is interruptive. Oh, you're not going to put this thing on here. Video interrupts your life because you have to have a screen in front of you. You can't drive and watch a video program. You have to be attached to a computer. You have to be attached to an iPod. You have to be attached to Apple TV. You can't just do this at any time. Like if you're wood turning, you can't wood turn and have your hand with dangerous equipment in front of you and still be watching a video. So when you consider using video or audio, there's no harm in using both. If you make your show a regular show, if it's just you sharing your thoughts, make it audio. And if suddenly you want to demonstrate and we'll pick on the knitters, if you want to demonstrate a stitching method or show the project you're working on, suddenly there's a way to use video and a reason to use video. Personally, I don't like watching talking heads. So in an interview, it doesn't offer anything to me to see the person speak that I won't get from hearing them speak.
Yeah, often audio can be much more intimate. I mean, simply from the fact that we're taking earbuds and sticking them in our ears and it's coming right in. It is a much more intimate medium than if we have to start using all the other senses as well. The other thing to consider, it doesn't have to be blog or podcast. It can be both. That's one of the things I'm working on now is moving my knitting podcast back to being a blog part of the time. You can think about that in terms of audience building too. You can add something of value on a show page, a blog page, to supplement what you've offered in the podcast. I'm trying to think of somebody like maybe Charles Hodgson with Predictionary. Although he's offering, I mean, you get his word of the day. He also has a transcript that comes up on your iPod. And I believe he puts the transcript up as well on his show page, and he now has 2 ways you can search for words. So if you're curious, you can go back and find and read as well as listen. What's that called? Predictionary. Predictionary.com.
Well, we'll throw up names of shows as they come up.
I mean, I'm sure there are other people who are doing sort of value-added kind of experiences as well with blogs and podcasts. Kat.
How important do you think show notes are?
Kat said, how important do you think show notes are?
That's what I use my blog for, my show notes. So if I talk about a website or talk about a picture or talk about, okay, I don't need that. If I talk about something in the show that's visual, then it's available on my blog. But I only use that to write down my show notes.
Because Google's not listening. They're
That's
reading.
Everybody's familiar with the concept of show notes?
If
you're new to podcasting.
Different than what I would imagine?
Show notes, well, basically, a podcast will sit on a blog, right? A blog is kind of like the foundation the podcast is just an audio file, right, or a video file. And so you stick it in a blog post, and that's where it becomes part of a feed, and people can subscribe, and we'll go into that technical side later. But what happens is if you just have a link to a file, then, well, what the hell is this? So show notes is really a way of telling your audience, here's this video file where I tell you the 8 secrets to being a really happy person. And then so somebody Googles 8 secrets to being a really happy person. They found your audio file. They found your podcast. They subscribe to it. So we'll go into all that. But that's what show notes do. And that show notes tie the text world to the audio world or the video world. That's really what it's all about.
And I think what you put as show notes, again, comes down to it's as individual as every person's podcast. I think because, I mean, my impression, Kat, is with you, it's more word of mouth that people have found you.
Well, actually,
Yeah, but because your podcast is very, very intimate and very personal, I think the intimate, personal ones tend to be a little more word of mouth. So that, if you have minimal show notes, it's enough that if people are looking for somebody talking about black jelly beans, they'll find you, they'll listen to the episode. Again, so that's, I mean, it's who is your audience and how are they going to find you?
I've heard somebody, read somebody suggesting that you should do verbatim transcriptions, but that can get expensive or time-consuming, both.
Unless you do a really short show.
Like this, right?
So just, I guess the whole objective, though, is just really making it more Googleable, searchable for search engine optimization.
Well, and if you script your show like Charles Hodgson does, he reads a script, so he's already written it, so it's nothing for him to post it. But if you do a show, Canadian Podcast Buffet is one of those shows that couldn't be transcribed because it's a dynamic and that's going to be lost in text. And there are people cutting each other off and getting excited. And to read it, you'd probably want to kill yourself. But to listen to it, it's two friends talking. And to transcribe something that is just off the cuff, and I think it would be very difficult to do that.
And it's one of the decisions I'm trying to make with Pearl Diving as well, because mine is completely scripted, right down to whatever sound effect I'm going to do that day. And I have wondered, is it worth my while putting it up as a transcript? Because I could very easily do that. But then I haven't decided if people are coming to me because they want audio or if people are coming to me because they want text. Or maybe there are people who would like both and would be perfectly happy just coming to the blog.
I do a community radio show in the town of Erin, where I'm from. It's on sustainable communities and anything to do with quality of life issues. So there's so much there that what I would be doing in a blog is I would be like, go to this reference, read this document, look at this, to color in all the stuff that I couldn't possibly say. So if people want to go deeper and deeper into the research, they can. So that's what I would imagine. I mean, they can just download the visual. If they wanted to get a transcript of what I said, then they can always just contact me and ask me for it. But I don't know whether that would be something that people would want. I guess I'd have to see what they would feed back to me.
And that's one of the things a blog is useful for, the show notes is useful for. You can get comments back from your listeners, and that makes it very, it makes it interactive, which I think is one of the things that is useful in terms of building audiences, is that they know they can talk back to you.
Should the blog be part of your own website or somewhere else?
Yes. It depends on your goal, Brett. If your goal is to make your podcast or your blog you, and that's what you're trying, because ultimately, even if it's business or not, ultimately we're promoting something. It's our views, it's our opinions, or it's something, or we just want to be heard. Somebody please hear me. Well, if you want to be heard as you, then you want that to be on your website. If you want it to be not heard as you might want to put up another front. And the internet is a great anonymizer, right? So you could invent a whole different name, a whole different persona, and podcast under that or blog under that name. There was a fake Steve Jobs blog that was really popular. Thousands of people were reading this blog, and the guy's name was fake Steve Jobs. It was openly admitted that he wasn't the real guy. Nobody knew who he was. Got found out, eventually, but it didn't matter. So, this guy didn't want to. He ended up being a writer, I think, for the some American magazine, and he didn't want to be known as that writer. He wanted to be known as fake Steve Jobs. He wanted to be able to express opinions under that umbrella. So it really depends what your goal is.
So if I call myself fake Oprah, would you think I'd get on Oprah?
Yes.
You know what?
But the advantage, strategically from a business point of view, of attaching your blog to your website is that, and again, it goes back to the advantage of having show notes for your podcast. Like you said, Google doesn't listen, it reads. So you have show notes for your podcast so that Google can find your podcast.
Yes.
And then you attach your blog to your business website, because the advantage there is what they call in French référencement, I don't know what you call it in English, but it's references basically,
The links,
and
the
link
links,
juice, like
yeah.
Google juice, because you will update your blog much more frequently than you'll update your business website, so that increases your visibility in Google rankings.
Because I'm just concerned about, do I put one on my website, do I put one elsewhere, and then updating it, because I don't want to end up having to go to a whole bunch of different places to do the updating. Mind you, I know that's supposed to be better. You should spend like, what, half an hour a day?
The goal of your podcast is to drive business for your company, and I will attach my podcast blog to my website.
Okay, thank you for that.
Can you reach? Well, don't get me up the legs.
I have a Facebook G group and about my podcast, and I put links to my podcast feed, but I also put the text, so people, will have a choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I find that's actually really awesome, because I find that those podcasts I listen to too often, I'll get a notice on Facebook that it's available, and it's like, oh great, now I can go and check iTunes.
Hey, some people don't like that at all. Because if you're already subscribed to a podcast, you don't need someone to tell you, go listen to my podcast, because, example, my husband absolutely hates it when I do that, because I send it out, it's a catfish show, I send it out in Facebook, because I don't do too many, so it's like, people forget about me. Oh yeah, in case you forgot, I did a show. But it can be overload to some people, because if they're already subscribed, then they don't need a notice saying that it's there. And if people are either in Twitter or in Facebook or in whatever the else there is, it can be like, okay, that's enough. I don't want to hear you ever again. So you can lose listeners by over showing them too much, whether it's in Facebook or whether it's through the RSS feed.
I think what used to happen is you had people who knew about podcasting and blogs, like over here, and then you had the Facebook people over here, and then you had the Twitter people over here, and then you had the other group of people over here. So you wanted to make sure that you told everybody. But as social media connects, right, because that's what it's all about, so all these groups now are overlapping. People who know Facebook know blogs for a majority of the people. And then Twitter is starting to move in now. Getting all these things overlaps. So if you send an update to each one of these individual groups when you put out a show, somebody who likes your stuff and has actually subscribed to it is going to get 9 messages now saying that you've put out a show. I know, it's already on my iPod, I'm subscribed. So you can hammer people into, okay, that's enough, I got to go away. And so that's one of the things you have to be careful as well. You have to manage that connection.
And I'm sure that's particularly important in a business scenario where you don't want to annoy your audience because you're actually trying to engage them for a business purpose. And if you're losing them, that's defeating it right there.
I'll just put this up as an example of show notes. This is the Canadian Podcast Buffet show that Mark and I do. This show, what we did is we had full transcripts, and you were talking about expense for transcription. It can be expensive. And this one we lucked out because we did a sponsorship exchange kind of arrangement. But there's actually people, like offshore, like in India, 100 words will cost you whatever, and there's low rates. If this is a presentation that Brian Person did at Podcasters Across Borders. Now, if you're Googling and you want to find out about, I don't know, what his topic was. Let's say you want to talk, who's talked about the Instigator blog? Well, if we hadn't had a full transcript, right, because our show notes up here, above the transcript, there's our show notes. Here's a nice little thing, here's Brian's presentation, he talks about this, enjoy, listen. Well, if I Googled Instigator blog, I would have never found this piece of audio where Brian talks about this piece. Well, with the full transcript now, somebody Googling it is going to hit that page. And that's the power of transcript.
Now, and you were talking about we lucked out. What's a satellite secretary did this for us on a sponsorship for PAD, and she's Toronto or Montreal, I can't remember. No, I think she's Toronto area. But then you talked about there's offshore. There's places. There's this woman in the Philippines that's very popular among podcasters. She charges 42 cents per podcast minute, or some such thing. So there's a lot of different ways you can go. Or if your show is short enough and you script it, then you can throw it up. Like you could post your scripts for your skits if you wanted to, because you already have them written. The ad libs would be unique.
So it's all about how you want to be found.
I made the conscious decision to not post transcripts, although all of my shows are scripted, because I got a little nervous about people stealing things. It's a lot more work to sit and type out what you're hearing than if somebody presents you with a script with all the notations, everything in there. So I made that conscious decision. I use my show notes as a hook. I put in something pithy and interesting that's a very short description of what's in the show. Most of my shows are under 10 minutes. And what I have in mind are two things. I have the longtime listeners who want to know about what music I played or who played what part in an audio play. And I also have somebody who's happening across my site for the first time and looks at that and says, oh, that sounds interesting, I'll click on that. So my show notes are very short. And, well, there you can see what they're. There you go.
She manages to stretch that one sentence out for 6 minutes and 47 seconds.
Can we throw a couple of other things up onto the parking lot?
Sure.
Creative Commons.
No, that's good.
Oh, yeah.
And show length.
How long?
How long?
Creative audio.
And just to kind of tag on to what you're saying, I've seen you can create whatever you want for show notes. You can have it be the one sentence, you can have the one paragraph, or I've seen it, Dignation. I really like what they did for their show notes. It's longer, but it's not a full transcription, but it's...
The thing is that and that all fits in with your goal, right? If your goal is just to do where you express your thoughts, and you're not a big marketing machine, and you just want, there's some bands that you walk in HMV, and the poster is this big, and here's the video, here's the CD, here's the DVD, here's the cereal box. Then, okay, I know about this band. And then there's the other band where a friend of yours goes, you know what? I was in this tiny little bar in the middle of Northern Ontario. Listen to this CD. And you listen to it with a completely different perspective. Mm-hmm. And so for some podcasts, that's the audience you want. And that's, for example, Kat's podcast is a great example of that. It just gets passed from friend to friend. Yeah. You're going to like this. Listen to this. And that, you build a nice, loyal audience that way. Now, if you're a marketing podcast, you don't want to be passed. You want to hit 10,000 people in 8 minutes, right? So it really depends on what your goal is. And if you're trying to build a community, or if you're trying to just hit numbers. And that's what it comes down to as well.
We actually have 4 minutes in this first block of time, so maybe we should just check in with what the goals of that 45 minutes were, see if there's any parking lot items that should be addressed as part of this session, and then give people a chance to stretch their legs and relax their brains for a few minutes.
Okay, and just to comment about the show notes and about the length of it, if certain blogging tools allow you to publish excerpts from your posts, and you can use that as well as a tool for putting out a little bit more than a one-liner, but less than a full transcription. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
I guess if you were worried about security but also wanted to be searchable, you could do an intriguing sentence for your show notes and then just put keywords that we talk about are, and then just list words that would be searchable.
Yeah, and that happens, and that's they call that tagging. So if you've heard of delicious tagging or technorati tags and that kind of stuff, for example, this is a buffet episode a couple weeks ago. Here are the main people we hit. Here are the main topics we talked about. So somebody
Bob, can you put that on the parking list there?
Tagging?
Yeah.
Tagging. I can do that.
We'd like to know more about that too.
Tagging is a big thing. Tagging is as big as Google, I think. And it's going to be bigger than Google. Or Google's going to use tagging. Bigger than Google. Yeah, buy my stock now.
We had a discussion about video, using video podcasts or an audio podcast, and one point I want to make is the common denominator is the audio. And so focusing on the audio and scripting, it's really important, even if we're doing video podcasting, because you can have a visually very pleasing video, and if the audio sucks, then there goes the whole presentation. So I think audio is really key. Ready?
Just addressing another aspect of the question around show length. In the community radio stuff that we do, we were trying to really be aware of the audience's rhythm and the way they can listen. So, for instance, for a half an hour show, I've got maybe 3 interviews with a small break in between. So it's like 8 to 10 minutes and people start to get a little tired. So it's not that you should maybe just stop at that, but you need to be thinking about rhythm and changing it up so that people don't get fatigued.
Absolutely. Now it's what kind of show you do, right? If you're doing like hard-hitting issues and you're interviewing like politicians or whatever, there's only so many politicians in the world you can listen to, right? Because it all sounds the same.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a music show, if you're doing, let's say you're doing a classical music show, and it's the kind of show where people are going to listen to it and they're going to, while they're working, you can easily have an hour-long show and not lose.
It's different.
Yeah. So it goes with the attention that people need to pay to your show.
It's okay not to know. It's okay not to know how long you want your show. It's okay not to know the answers, but you have to get started, and then all of a sudden things will just grow organically.
If you want it to be 10 minutes, you're going to find 100 people who tell you it should be half an hour. If you want half an hour, you're going to find 100 people who tell you it should be 10 minutes.
Well, I guess that's the whole key, is that you just build a relationship with your audience, and then they tell you what they want, and next, you're just responding to what they're saying.
They don't. Because, and that's the difference, I think, with podcasting, is radio, they'll tell you because you look at the ratings. Oh, the ratings are down, they must not like that traffic report, whatever. But with podcasting, it's not even that simple, because it's not 88 to 108 anymore, it's the world. So if there's 10 knitting podcasts, and you have 10 minutes that you're on the treadmill that you can listen to a knitting podcast, the half-hour one is off the list. It doesn't matter what you do. And you're never going to find out why that listener's not listening, because his criteria was, or her criteria, or whatever, was 10 minutes knitting.
But if you're so passionate about a particular topic, chances are you're going to listen to 10 knitting podcasts. Marketing is a great one. Everybody who listens to 6 Pixels of Separation probably also listens to Inside PR, probably also listens to Jaffe Juice, probably all, and they all talk about each other. So it's circular. So you end up going, oh, part of this conversation is taking place over at Inside PR. I better go over there and check it out. And I don't know what it's like in the knitting community if you guys kind of cross-reference, but in some niches, you end up, you create a little community where everybody kind of follows each other around from show to show.
And I think, the interesting thing is I get the number one email comment I get is, your show is too short. And I think of all the 3 most popular, Guido's fairly popular too. Guido, Brenda Dane's Cast On, David Reedy's Sticks and Strings, and Lyman Violet, which is just Lyman Violet. They're probably the top knitting podcasts, and none of them run under an hour. Lyman Violet are actually notorious for going an hour and a half or longer. And they all have a really, really strong fan base. And I think, some of it is people listen to knitting podcasts while they're knitting. So they want an hour. They want that time. I don't listen to knitting. I don't listen to any podcasts while I knit because I need to concentrate. So for me, it's what do I need for the treadmill? Half-hour max. And then I have to make time for people who are longer than half an hour.
Because I just shot my first few pilots just 2 weeks ago, and I said, okay, we'll just create whatever we create. This is what we're going to try to do. And they ended up being 10 to 15 minutes long. It's like, whoa, everybody's telling me they should be 5 minutes long, otherwise no one's going to watch them. And it's like, yeah, you can't build a relationship because we want it to be funny and we want to engage the audience and build a relationship. And so now
You'd be amazed, though. There are some short shows out there that give you the goods in 5 to 10 minutes and leave you wanting more. So you want to come back the next time. A show that I produce, which I don't produce as often now just because I've got a million other things on the go, one of the things I used to always get is, you ended too soon. It's like, great, come back next time.
Yeah, leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
And I do think to some extent that the content will determine your length. And that's one of the advantages we have, that we don't have to be radio. We don't have to fill in 27 minutes and leave 3 minutes for the news and the weather. I tend to be short, but I've run from 7 minutes to 20 minutes. And if I need to do 20 minutes to get out what I want to say that week, that's what I do. And I don't worry about it. I could not talk for an hour or an hour and a half. I just couldn't do it.
Sorry.
Oh, gee.
We're organizing lunch. Sorry.
Well, do we want to move on to give people a chance to stretch?
Okay, take 5 minutes to stretch.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
I still want to take a check.
Yeah, they want to take a check.
That's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think we're getting. I think we're pretty close to where Mark said break was.
Well, I think it said the first session was 45 minutes. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, break time.
Very eclectic. Not only is it a podcast, but that's interesting.
I don't. Just
because it's break time doesn't mean to stop the discussion or anything like that. If anybody's got anything like to, engage in discussing,